Geordie LaForge is attending an artificial intelligence seminar. One of the Creosian colonies is fighting for independence, and Counselor Troy doesn't believe Geordie's story about meeting a lady on Risa. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 4, Episode 24, already The Mind's Eye, story by Ken Schaefer and Renee Echevarria, teleplay by Renee Echevarria. This is directed by David Livingston. What a big surprise, what luck. Special guest today, Mr. David Livingston is here with us. How are you today, David?
Yes.
I'm terrific. Thank you for the invite, guys.
So excited to have you.
It's a pleasure to have you. Absolutely.
So let's get this started. This is such an important episode to have you, and such a great episode because, true or false, this is your directorial debut.
True.
And how did it come about?
I don't know if you guys have talked about it in the past, but Rick Berman created the DIT School, which was director in training for actors and behind the scenes people who aspired to be directors that worked on the show. And the first graduate of the DIT School was Jonathan Frakes. And he proved the worthwhileness of having such such a school or training period, because he certainly delivered, and his subsequent career has proved it was a major success and a great call by Rick Berman. So we got into the fifth season, and I think it was fourth or fifth season, Ryan, which...
Fourth season. This is the end of the fourth. Yeah.
Yep.
Fourth season. At the beginning of the fourth season, Rick mentioned to me if I wanted to go to the DIT School as well. He liked the way that I responded to dailies and would talk to him about stuff, and saw that I had a passion for the work. And he said, if you want to go to DIT School, do that, and then I'll decide whether I want to give you a shot. So I had a lot of emotional reservations about doing it. So I went back into therapy for 9 months to get over my fear of directing. And also I went to the DIT School, where I watched other directors working on the set. I went to editorial, post-production, did a deep dive into the scripts, and thought about what I would do if I was given the opportunity to direct. And then after my therapy was over, and after I had felt I did a lot of scene study where I'd bring in, where I'd get actors to work on scenes with me and figure out what the through line was and the premise and all that kind of stuff, all that directing kind of stuff. Read a lot of books. And after that 9 months, I went to Rick and said, I'm ready if you want to give me a shot. And he did. And I got The Mind's Eye. So that's a capsulized version of my journey to directing.
Wow.
I also always wanted to be a director. I went to USC Film School, and my career path was always in production, not on the creative side. So it was a great gift to be able to transfer over and into the creative side when Rick offered me the directing job.
Wow, that is a great story. I didn't realize about Rick and this DIT School. I've obviously seen a lot of the actors direct throughout the course of this show. I've worked with LeVar Burton myself, and obviously, Renee and Avery and a lot of directors, and Jonathan Frakes, who's, essentially now become the all-time leading scorer in directing when it comes to Star Trek. But David, I want to give you super compliments on this episode, and the choices that you made I thought were excellent. There were aspects of the ship that I felt like I hadn't seen before that you captured in your shots, particularly some of the lighting panels on the higher part of the ceiling area. I got to see a lot of those lighting panels, which sometimes get cropped a lot. It gives me more depth of the ship and how ceilings are kind of laid out. Um, Loved a lot of the choices you made as far as the overhead pan shot that you went into in the turbo lift, which went into a close up of Geordi. Another way of just seeing the turbo lift in a different way. For me, what I look for when I'm watching is does the director make me feel like I'm seeing the ship in new ways and feeling a different experience? That I feel like you accomplished with Flying Colors, and a lot of the camera movements as well, like the pans, the overhead sweeps coming down, even the the big cargo bay. It felt like I had seen it in a different way in this particular episode. The cargo bay itself, the ladder going up, the bigness of it, just felt the different. Just captured a lot of the ship, and so I want to commend you for the attention to detail that you put into these episodes. It really resonated with me.
That is so gracious of you. Thank you. It surprised me when I went back and looked at the episode. I watched it yesterday, and it clearly reflected how I saw things. And I didn't realize it until I did the episode, how I saw things. And it is reflective of everything else I did after that on all the other episodes I did on Star Trek. And that is, I like to see a lot of information, and I love wide angles. And what you're talking about, seeing the ceiling panel, I like to shoot low and I like to shoot wide. So the panel stuff you were talking about and the ceiling and stuff, I just put the camera low and shot with a very wide angle lens. Same thing with the cargo bay. It's a fascinating set, and I wanted to show how large it was and you do that by making the people seem small. And the ladder was a great piece. I'm sure Herman gave me that, but I needed to incorporate it and show the difference. And you brought up the turbo lift shot. I didn't do this in my subsequent directing, but I shot that scene with two different lenses, where the camera starts high and then comes down into a close up of LeVar. I shot it with a wide lens, which is the one that's in the picture, and a very, very, very wide lens, hoping that Rick might pick the very, very, very wide lens, and he didn't, because it was very, very, very wide. And my thing was, if I had only shot it with the very, very, very wide lens, he might have been inclined, not necessarily forced, but inclined to pick it. But because I gave him the choice, he picked the less radical one. So I learned a big lesson. If you want to make your point, make your point. If they don't like it, they can tell you to reshoot it. So it was a bit of a lesson learned for me to not give the producers a choice. But it was
that's
it
funny
was very,
because
very, very wide. Yeah.
That's funny because when I think back on the times that we worked together, I kind of remember distinctly moments where you would say as a director, "Cut, print, let's do it again." And I would say, "I thought we're printing that," and that was, I guess, because you wanted these other variations of what you wanted.
That was not I shouldn't have done that. And you are not the first actor to have pointed that out to me. In fact, you're probably the 50th actor. But I have no justification for it other than I loved seeing things happen. And sometimes there was a minor thing with the camera that I felt we could get better. But sometimes I wanted to see what you guys did. And maybe there was something else, something magic might happen. And that was selfish on my part. And I took a lot of static for it. And I regret the way that I did it. I shouldn't have said cut, print one more. I should have said cut one more and not print, but I would get in the editing room, and I got to tell you, I looked at everything, and I even went back and printed a lot of stuff that I didn't print originally, just making sure that I didn't miss one little beat that might have been magic that I hadn't seen before. If I was obsessive compulsive on the stage, I was even more so in the editing room. A lot of directors would go in and cut their episode and be done before the allowance of days that they were given by the Directors Guild contract. I would take mine to the last second, where Peter Lauritsen, who was the head of post-production, would have to haul me out of the editing room, because I didn't want to. First of all, I didn't want to let go. I love the process, and I would come home at night and. In the early days of the editing, before we got into full digital editing, I had cassettes that I would bring home. And on my little TV set, I'd be putting in and out of cassettes, writing down time code numbers and stuff. OCD to the max. But I loved the process, and I loved finding little things and satisfying myself. I wasn't out to satisfy Rick Berman, the other producers, the writers, the audience. I had to satisfy myself. And if I didn't satisfy myself, then I felt I was letting the process down. So kudos to me. I'm not trying to brag about it. I'm simply saying I had so much invested and felt such a responsibility that I had to give my best at every moment.
Well, David, I'll brag on your behalf real quick, because there are a lot of things I noticed. A couple things I wanted to say. Beyond just wide shots, you seem to really love layers and depth. And you had such a great use of foreground and background. And like, first of all, just the shot with Geordi listening to the music and the Romulan warbird appearing in the background, right? Then also, like you mentioned, the cargo bay, right, with the shuttlecraft there. And we're seeing things. There are people in the foreground, there's background, there's up here, there's 3 stories. There's so much going on, almost like a Rubik's Cube. Also,
Texture.
and in engineering, same thing. That shot in engineering, I was like, this is the craziest shot I've ever seen. We're like looking down, we're looking down at one level, we're standing on another level, there's somebody else down on another level. There was so much going on in this. On top of the fact that this seemed like it was actually a pretty difficult episode to direct on its own, and yet you took that challenge and still leveled it up 2 or 3 notches. And my question to you is, David, they clearly threw you into the deep end on your directorial debut. They didn't just give you Counselor Troy has a love interest, to kind of get your feet wet and kind of get used to it. When you read the script, did you think, oh boy, there's a lot going on in this. This is a doozy. Or did you think, or were you excited like, oh, here we go, I'm going to show what I can do?
The latter. I mean, come on. One of my favorite movies is John Frankenheimer's version of The Manchurian Candidate. And when I read the script, it was The Manchurian Candidate. And I died and went to heaven. I even did a homage shot to The Manchurian Candidate when Geordi shoots O'Brien. It's almost exactly the same kind of shot that Frankenheimer did in The Manchurian Candidate. And it was my homage, because that's what we were doing. We were doing The Manchurian Candidate. And I always loved the episodes where our characters were outside of their normal characters, where they were not themselves. And also to get into people's minds. I love doing mind melds and crazy stuff like that. And to have LeVar possessed and tortured and brainwashed, what could be more fun for a director? And when I look back on the episode, I said, yeah, it was my first effort, and I learned a lot, and I hopefully progressed as my directing career continued. And I would have done a lot more today than I would then. But I am satisfied with what I did do, because I didn't walk away from that premise of being brainwashed and trying to get the audience to feel that they were in some way experiencing the same thing that Geordi was experiencing. So thank you. I had nothing but fun. I thought I had to overcome my fear to direct, but my first day on the set, I was the kid in the candy store, and I didn't want to go home. I could have slept on the stage for the 7 days.
One of the things that resonate when I watch this episode, David, is the understanding that you have of the characters. I felt like each character was well incorporated into the script, and gave great performances that was accurate to their characters. So that's a testament to both your directing skills and also Rene Echevarria for the way he wrote this episode. It felt like the voice of each character. But I wanted to ask you, because this is when I felt like you were in the editing room. I said, he had to have been in the editing room. Obviously, you mentioned that. But the moment when I felt like he was definitely there leaving this kind of impact was at the end of the episode. Sometimes we see Star Trek make a comical turn at the very end of an episode. And so you'll be digesting this very serious, complex matter, or solving this problem, or using your critical thought. And then at the end, it's like, like a Leave It to Beaver type moment, and they go into this comical one-liner. What I felt on this episode was the tone was a lot different for a closeout episode, which I loved, because it ended with the Troy, which you chose to put her on more of a black backdrop, which allowed her to really pop on screen for me, that there wasn't anything behind her. But it was a very emotional and compassionate sit down between Troy, who's doing her actual counseling skills, which we get to see in full effect, work her way with Geordi and trying to exercise his memory and getting it back. But you end on this very lovely musical soft note with the slow pan of the ship. It felt very healing for me. It felt like a good note to end on, of more of like an optimism for things will get okay and we'll get back to normal. But I wanted to talk just a little bit about the musical cues for that ending, the kind of slow rollout. Was that something that you were really, trying to emphasize at the end?
First of all, in the beginning was the word. This was all in the script. And Rene was a wonderful writer. I don't know if you remember Sirach, but he did the rewrite on The Visitor and brought in a lot of the emotional content and context of that script. And these were Rene's words. And in terms of the actors, I got out of the way. I very rarely directed the actors. I didn't have to direct LeVar and Marina. They knew their stuff. All I had to do was put the camera in the place that I thought it should be to capture what they were doing as actors. That was my job. And then I got out of the way. And what they both did in that scene was fantastic. I didn't have to direct it. They knew the actors. First of all, they had the words, and they knew their given circumstances. They had gone through an arc where she made fun of him going to Rise and all this stuff. And it was set up to go to this incredibly fraught moment for him to realize that this was going to be with him forever. And I love the episodes that affected characters to that point. The problem with Star Trek in general was you didn't feel that continued, and it didn't seem to have affected their characters as the series went on, because you can't keep revisiting that. But that moment where LeVar is thinking about everything that went on is so moving. And to me, it's the best moment. The last shot and the last bit of the pushing is the most powerful part of the episode, because of everything that's led up to it, and how LeVar, without his eyes, I mean, he had the most beautiful eyes, but he does it without us. He's got that crazy visor thing on, which he couldn't wait to get rid of, but he sells it. the eyes are the soul of the actor to the soul, and he didn't have that. He had to do it with his voice, his emotion, and everything. And it's the proof is in the pudding. So again, I put the camera there and let them do their job. So I'll take credit for any part of it you want to give me, but and the music, episodic directors do not get to participate in the scoring. They don't get to be there for the scoring session to be able to say to the composer, "I want something like this at the end." It just doesn't happen. So I can't take any credit for any of the music either in terms of the direction of it.
But it was so complimentary.
But that's the life of the episodic director. We had very little control over the creative part of the show after we finish shooting, and that's a reality. Excuse me.
And also, you mentioned Manchurian Candidate, and I wanted to ask: is that the reason why you chose some of those angles to emphasize the eerie, because it felt like, there's certain moments when you're watching horror or some kinds of suspense films where the action is emphasized by camera angles, and it felt that way as well in this moment. For example, when Geordie's walking down the hallway.
That was I knew you were going to bring that one up. That's the best moment right there. It's beautiful.
Right.
Beautiful lens. Beautiful. Yeah.
Beautiful lens. And the ship is captivating. Like, again, I get to see the ship in the hallway. Felt very long. You made the ship feel big. Like, you made it feel like this was a big place. And so, but specifically that camera angle where you're walking with Geordie, he's kind of walking towards the camera and you guys are all pulling back. And I felt like, I was like, oh, that's one of those suspense movies, horror type of shots. And I don't know if it was intended to be that way, but I got that feeling, and I thought it was excellent. Like I said, I got to see parts of the ship where I felt I didn't see this before. Where this is great. It's big.
I agree with you 100%. I love the wide angle, and I agree with your summation of the effect of the shot. I stole from wherever I could steal from. Rob Bowman, who was one of the early directors on The Next Generation, he would do stuff like that as well. So I'm with you. And in Manchurian Candidate, Frankenheimer shot a lot of stuff in depth, where you'd have something in focus in the foreground and in the background. So again, you synthesize all this stuff, and then you don't try to copy, but you try to incorporate it into how you see things. So it's not a direct steal, but it's my interpretation of that process. The other shot is the push in to LeVar when he's being tortured. I looked at the script, and it doesn't say that he screams in the script, and I don't remember how that came about, but the impact of that shot doesn't happen unless he's screaming at the end. Otherwise, it's just pushing in. So again, maybe it was serendipity or whatever, but shots are important. You're telling the director's job is to use the camera as a character. It's the director's character. You have a character, Chirac, right? And my character as a director is the camera. And to me, it's my most important character, because I am interpreting the story, and I'm telling the audience where to pay attention. And with the camera, I'm trying to affect them emotionally. What's your job as an actor? To affect the audience emotionally. If you're not doing that as a director, why are you doing the job? You're just shooting shots to shoot shots. But every shot first should advance the plot, advance the story, advance the through line, advance the premise, but also to keep the audience emotionally invested. Right?
Yeah, and let me give you one more kudos again for the way that you did that. The shot with Ambassador Kell while he's eating this octopus or whatever it was, and then in comes Geordie again, this foreground, background. and the way he kind of talks to him without really directly looking at him. I mean, it was beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you. No coverage of.
Yeah.
We don't cut into LeVar.
No cut.
That would have spoiled it, because the power is with this guy he's just eating his dinner, and it's all rote.
Doesn't even look at
and he
him.
knows who it is. He knows who it is.
Doesn't even. No, he says, Dorothy,
Yes.
Jordy, do this. Dorothy's my wife. Some of that's in the script, obviously, but I love that moment. By the way, Lawrence Dobson, who plays that guy,
killed it.
He and I had a great time because he directed TOS.
Oh, he directed?
Yes.
Lawrence Dobson.
Lawrence Dobson was a well-known episodic director in the 60s, as well as an actor. He's in one of my favorite movies, North by Northwest. He's one of the actors in it. And I had such a great time talking to him and getting guidance from him. I pumped him for as much stuff as I could get. Because as a director, he was a treasure to me as a director. And he was great in the part. Fabulous. But
wow, he directed the second episode that ever aired of Star Trek, Charlie X. Wow, that's amazing.
There you go. Yeah, isn't that wild?
It's
a small community.
It's like full circle there.
Small.
So, David, we only have you for another minute or two here, but it's really cool that you went back and you watched the episode again, whatever it is, 33 years later. Can you give us we've gotten a sense of it, but can you walk us through the feeling you get when you watch the episode, your directorial debut, again, 33 years later? Are you constantly doing what a lot of us do, which is, I should have done this, or I should have done? Is it a sense of pride? Is it fun? What's the feeling like?
As a first episode, I'm okay with it. I thought the end was poor. I did something at the end where I was pressed for time and I compromised, which when I got home that night, I was devastated and said I would never do that again. And hopefully I never did do that again, where I felt that I let the clock rule my process. But I see in the episode what my approach to directing was and how it influenced everything that came after. So I basically showed the tools that I was going to use as a director going forward. And that was fun for me to see, saying, oh yeah, well, that's where that came from. And I just kept doing the same thing for another 61 episodes. It's all kind of there. Yeah, it could have been a lot better. And there's things I'd want to change, but I didn't. I felt I went through my quote unquote vision and kind of developed it. So in that way, I'm satisfied with the work.
Awesome.
Let me say, I don't think it could have been much better. This is one of my top episodes of all time. I didn't find any flaw in it.
Okay.
As far as this series is concerned, I'm putting this in my top 5 episode off the bat.
Whoa, come on.
Yeah, it's up there with Measure of a Man, Yesterday's Enterprise. To me, it's one of the top 5 I've seen so far up till this point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because it had me engaged. It had me engaged, couldn't look away. I love it when the guy who is part of the crime is also part of solving the right. It's like it's a double. It's the Manchurian Candidate. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, it was a great story.
And having the ambassador in on it, I mean, all of those things was just I couldn't pull away, and I felt every character had a very logical part to play. Data and Riker playing investigation on the E something. The 10 forward shots, seeing the bar, seeing, that whole setup with O'Brien, another great use of the character. Worf's suspicions, Worf used as security, excellent. Dr. Crusher, also her medical moment with him, and just, that compassion there. And obviously Troy, which I also talked about earlier. So you couldn't use a cast better than you did in this episode. everybody had a very integral part to play in this story. And you have guest stars, and you have Romulans, and you have Bird of Preys. I mean, what else do you want? I don't think there's much more than that. I love this episode. It felt like a feature film in an episode, and I want to say you did a fantastic job.
Totally.
Fantastic job.
Rock, if I hadn't needed an agent anymore, you'd be first on the list. So thank you. That's so generous of you, and I get a big kick out of you guys. I do watch your podcasts, and I'm grateful that I love coming back and doing this kind of stuff and revisiting these things and all these great memories and being part of this community, which is so extraordinary. We are all so fortunate to exist in this world, and the proof is in the pudding that this is 35 years later. What other television show, feature films? Yeah, Star Wars. Yeah, that's certainly working. But look at what Star Trek does, and look at all the shows that have keep getting born again. I'm so grateful to be a part of this world.
Mm-hmm. And we're grateful to have you a part of this world for 35 years. My goodness, you've left quite the legacy. What did you say, 61 episodes, something like that? Unbelievable. That
62.
62. Plus, as a producer, line producer, supervising producer on so many episodes, so many shows, truly you were one of the heartbeats of Star Trek for the last 35 years. And Mr. David Livingston, we hope to see you again sometime soon. We really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks very much.
You got it.
Now, everybody at home, stick around. Sirach and I are going to throw way more compliments David's way while he's gone. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello.
Here are the trivioids of the episode, and they go a little something like this. Geordi LaForge is attending an artificial intelligence seminar, or was going to, I guess. Captain Picard has ordered Geordi to go to Risa early to relax. One of the Creosian colonies is fighting for independence. The Enterprise was able to coordinate Geordi's return on the Teldarian cruiser. The Canarians have actually done the most advanced work on artificial intelligence. Captain Picard swears well in Klingon. Counselor Troy doesn't believe Geordi's story about meeting a lady on Risa, and Geordi wears brown PJs. Those were fun. Brown PJs. All right, so one thing that we said to David Livingston just now during our break was how well the episode moved. I found myself shocked at how much they crammed in one episode, and it had only been 31 minutes at that time. And that's got to be major kudos to him shooting these scenes that move, but also being in the editing room and making sure to really trim that fat, because it felt like there was a lot. We got taken for a ride. Like, you could have had an entire episode just on what Geordi went through. But that was just within the first 10 minutes. And then there were just so many chapters in this episode that it just felt like it was an amazing amount they put in 43 minutes.
Well, the thing is, you've got the Klingon storyline with Worf's history, his ancestral history, the Klingons, and they mentioned about thanks for killing Duras, and that kind of brought up that storyline again. It brought resurfaced those memories of Duras and Worf's backstory. Then you get O'Brien incorporated into the story. You get, like I said, the investigative work that Riker was doing with data about the E-ray emissions or whatever it was, right? And so then they do the rifle testing. They find the weapons, Federation weapons. You have Picard doing a lot of diplomacy between him and the Klingons, and that face-off that he had, with the other Klingon, which I thought was another moment. I enjoyed that shot, the face-to-face shot with Picard. He looked like a badass in that moment, right? Picard looked tough in that moment. He looked like
he finally got to show off a little. He finally got to push back a little bit and show his Klingon.
Yeah, he got to be skills. Like a badass. And for a moment, Picard is like, I draw a line here. I'm not going to let you push me over. And, and I'm going to match your toughness with my own toughness. And I felt the energy in that moment was well captured, both performance-wise and the framing of the shot. It looked like a poster with two boxers kind of, face to face.
It did, yeah. It's like,
right?
You're right, like in the weigh-in, right? They're like,
at the weigh-in, like it felt like that. So, again, just emphasizing the emotional aspects of these shots. You had the torture with the Romulans and the whole simulation of the killing with the Romulans. That was a whole section, right? It was just layered and layered and layered with really good stuff. I thought I love Dr. Crusher's moments. I love Troy's use in this episode. She was sensing stuff and prying and being investigative about his experience, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And there was this really good moment that David alluded to, but I wanted to touch on it a little bit more, was the shot during the simulation, as you mentioned, where Geordi kills O'Brien. And it was magnificent because you get this shot where he sits down and he puts on his little fake, smile. Oh, look, everything's great. And then the camera just kind of pans over and you see right over the shoulder O'Brien just there with his dead eyes open. Right? Yeah. It's dark. It's dark for Star Trek. It's also a Star Trek character being happy after killing another Star Trek, another member of the Enterprise, which is something that's never happened before, right? Like, it's so dark that this was the perfect storyline for us to get a moment like that, because there's no other storyline where we can have a member of the Federation killing another member of the Federation, and then that dichotomy of the dead eyes and tragedy with everybody acting like, hey, everything's fine and everything's great. We've never had that before, and we don't again, and that's only because of this specific storyline. So you really want to highlight it by showing it in the same shot, so I really like that. That was really cool.
And I meant to ask David about this, but there's so much, it's just like the episode, there's so much to cram in. But I wanted to ask him about the use of Geordi's vision in the ultraviolet spectrum, or whatever that kind of predator vision that they use.
I was trying to remember, and I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is your first time watching through, so yours isn't muddled by all the other seasons, but I feel like this was the first time we got to see what Geordi sees. No,
I think we've seen a little bit of what Geordi sees, but this was the most we've seen it.
We got to see, I don't remember seeing the line coming through, or maybe I'm wrong, but it felt like it was more detailed and we got to see more. But anyway, go on with what you're saying.
No, I think so. What I recall is a moment where Geordi is either looking at a panel or something electronic and he can see something, one of those, or maybe it was the Q episode where he had the vision and they I'm not sure, but I think there was a brief moment where now this looks like a completely different graphic or different kind of template they use, because it was more like the Terminator, where it was, analyzing who that person was, and then you would see some writing that showed up. So maybe this is the enhanced version that comes from the Romulans operating system, right? So maybe Geordi's normal operating system is different visually, but since they downloaded the Romulan specs to it, it could have altered what he sees. Because if I'm not mistaken, I saw Romulan writing on the screen when he was assessing different people.
Good point. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's probably they're hacking into his visual spectrum. And this is what their computer sensors, or their computer has added to the filter.
Interesting. Yeah. And then obviously this scene behind me here, this whole contraption, like I said, this could have been its own episode, a Geordi Must Suffer episode. He's captured. He's fighting the, saying, don't get into my brain, but instead they're just like, nope, zip, zap, here's the plan, here's what we're doing. Dark, shadowy figure. And, they built this cool set. They built this cool contraption. Geordi, LeVar Burton's acting is second to none. I've always been so impressed with his acting. Again, that he has to do it without the use of his eyes, which is what actors use the most. It's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool to see him acting this out, especially because he has to act like himself, but with something kind of just right behind that we're watching for. So it doesn't have to be big. He doesn't have to make us.
Well, for
suspicious.
me, it was he was extra chipper when he got back.
He was.
It was like, it wasn't normal. Geordi is like a little like, oh God, okay, well, it's not, he's not that chipper. He was too even Data was like, I think he said it's a joke. And Data's like, oh yes, a joke. That is, this kind of humor.
That was so funny. When he's like, oh, I'm sorry that you did not enjoy your time on Risa. He's like, I guess I'll have to endure more time on Risa. Yeah, that was great.
So there was a little extra pep in his step, which Troy was suspicious of. She's like, and he's like, and I had an ice cream, and I listened to some music. And,
oh my God, that was ruthless though. When she's like, oh, okay, and then he says, okay, and I met a girl. Her name was John
Aker.
And then she goes, and she's like, okay, and then he walks away, and that's when she got suspicious. She's like,
bro,
you met a girl, huh? And you don't want to impose with all the gruesome details of what you got. Yeah, sure. I'm sure you had a real adult time with the lady, but that was so rude. I couldn't believe it.
It was rude. He was like, yeah, you don't want to hear about that. She's like, this something's
it would
my
have been
radar
so
is
funny
sensing something.
If she goes to Captain Picard, she goes, Captain, I'm sensing something awful has happened to Geordi. Why? What do you mean, counselor? And she goes, he said he was with a woman. Oh dear, what's happened to Geordi? Red alert!
Red alert!
No. He's been captured.
That was a dead giveaway for Troy. I thought that was hilarious. But you see, what made this episode really work too is when the writing, and what they did was they had it was high drama, and what makes it dramatic is the stakes are high. You feel the looming presence of a Klingon Federation, war essentially on the brink. So that's what's up for grabs, right? So boom, they give you high stakes up for that. Then you get this spying with the Romulans and their, the nefarious infiltration of the Federation. Another high drama, stakes are raised element, and then you have, how are we going to save Geordi without killing, Geordi, right? And it's like, how do we solve all of this without, putting some hurt on somebody like Geordi that we care about? So all of those things will have to be navigated through the story. And I thought they did an excellent job of raising the stakes, keeping the drama high, having even like that transmitter as one of the main, carriers of the story, of the plot line, the emission of these E-band waves that, usually a protostar would emit, and having that as the technology based aspect of the storyline. So you can solve that. I thought they just layered this episode with the diplomacy, with the problem solving, with the last minute, the time schedule. Everything has to be timed. An element of time is basically one of the functions of pushing the storyline. He's going to kill this ambassador at this moment. All of those things were excellent tools to keep the story at a high intensity level.
I also thought it was funny when Jordy says, "All right, I'm going on vacation to Riza. I'm sipping my drink." I was with him there. He was sipping his drink. He's like, "Let me get some Latin music." Nope, that's too sassy. Let me just like a flamenco guitar, something. And I was like, I was with Jordy on that. I was like, "This is so good." He's like, 3 hours like this. I know. I'm gonna play a fun game. Computer, let's play a game. And it's like work. The game is like work. It's I'm like, and I expect him to be like, no, 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 something fun. But he's like, oh, okay, boy, I've got the games I like to play are super nerdy work games too. Like, it's such a Jordy thing to do. No wonder he never hooks up.
Yeah, he wanted to play 30 questions with the computer on how to alphabetize
metallic alloys or something.
Something crazy. But yeah, I was with him too right up until that's when I was like, yeah, that's why you're Jordy.
That's where you lost
fun
me, bro.
For you. Yeah, that's fun for you. You want to read the encyclopedia for fun? No, thank you.
Nice game.
I love the costuming in this, specifically for this Ambassador Kell. I loved his wardrobe. I thought it looked super Klingon-y to me. It just looked well done. It had a bigness to it. It looks like how those top-level Klingons dress with that full coat of layers, and then some metal. And it was very elaborate. Enjoyed it a lot.
So we're very close to out of time, which is why it's time for the seventh rule home run of the episode. Cirroc Lofton, who gets the home run of today's episode?
Well, I'm going to give the episode home run to both the writer and director. I'm going to give it to David Livingston. I felt like those shots that he took and those chances he took, the wide angles, love to see the ceiling. I've seen light shine on other actors' faces in other episodes, and I'm thinking, where's that light emanating from? And David showed us where the light is emanating from, which is these light panels on the ceiling. Thought was great. And then the writer, Renee Echevarri, I thought he just nailed the voices of each character. I felt like each character was speaking from their own, voice. And yeah, I loved every moment of this. There wasn't a single real flaw for me in this episode. So even when Data says to Worf, I need you to apprehend Geordi. And Worf is like, excuse me? He's like, that's an order. The way he said that's an order, Data, I loved it. It was just small things. But so yeah, the writer, Renee, and David Livingston for his directorial debut, I thought nailed this one as hard as you can nail it, putting this episode in my top five.
I'm just looking right now real quick too. There's the fellow by the name of John Fleck who played Tyback, who I guess was the Romulan guy. And I just recognized that name immediately. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. John Fleck. He's in a bunch of Enterprise episodes as Silic, a Suliban, if I remember correctly, like maybe 5, 7, 8 episodes, something like that. So I look him up, and that's not all. He's also in 3 episodes of The Orville. He's also in an episode, oh wait, here it is, Enterprise, 7 episodes as Silic. And he's also in Voyager as a character named Abaddon, and he's in Deep Space Nine in 3 episodes. He was a Cardassian overseer in The Homecoming, Season 2. In Season 3, he was Ornithar in Season 3, Episode 1, The Search, and in Season 7, Episode 16, Inter Arma Enim Silent Leges 1, Koval he played. Anyway, this guy is everywhere. Cool. Cool actor. Great legacy. Anyway, I totally agree with you. Writer and director definitely get the home runs. Grand salami for David Livingston. Great stuff. Very easy to decide that one. Good. Great all around. Now, Also, very easy to decide is the names that I'm going to say right now because it's right in front of me. Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman, Tom T.J., Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Titus Muller, Dr. Muhammad Noor, Tierney C. Diekman, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, My Live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manosfi, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Tim Baum, Chris Sternick, Greg K. Wickstrom, and of course, Jason Oken and Chris Garris. Everybody stick around. We've got the free-for-all up next. We'll see you on the other side on The Seventh Rule. Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton. It's time for the free-for-all with Melissa Longo.
Hi there.
And, of course, Jason M. Oken with a poster behind him. Chris Garris is in Corpus Christi, but don't hold that against him.
Hello.
And Carrie Schwent's got her cool Romulan design behind her. TJ Jackson Bay is out in Missouri on the bridge of the Enterprise D. And
Cisco kid shirt.
Oh, yeah, that's right. From Abyssinian Kiosk. Dr. Susan V. Gruner is in her woman cave showing off. Always looking beautiful back there. Allison Leach Hyde, cool shirt. There she is. She's in New Mexico. Greg K. Wickstrom is in Hawaii. Looks like he's in the shuttlecraft with Geordi. And the Dark Lord, Chris McGee, reminds us to be kind. All right. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Sue.
What year did this? When did this episode air? Do you remember, Ryan?
Yeah, it was 91. Let me see. May. What was it? May something. I'm pulling it up right now. May 25th, 1991.
Wow.
I'm going to give it, since it's 1991, I'm going to give it a 9-1. A 9.1.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow,
Oh,
that's
that was
great.
the biggest smile we've ever seen Sue make right there. Does anybody else?
I was going to say 6.
Does anybody else have any guesses
No.
that doesn't already know?
IMDb, I'd say 7.9.
7.9.
I'll go
I'm not going
8.2.
to touch this one. This is could either be really high or middle. So I'm in.
Forensically speaking, it's a 10.
Nice.
Nice.
Okay, I'm gonna bet $1.
Okay.
All right, I guess that's everybody. All bets are in. It is it's George Murasan.
Wow.
7.7.
7.7. Wow.
I know, surprising, right? Maybe this is an episode that ages well, and it seems a lot better now than when people first saw it. I don't know, but
It has Romulans in it.
what about non-appearance mentions? Did we get any non-appearance mentions today? I didn't catch any.
Keiko.
Keiko?
Duras.
Yes.
Keiko.
Yes.
Oh, and
Keiko.
Duras.
yeah.
Duras.
Oh, and Duras. Yeah.
Honduras. I got a non-appearance mention that isn't a non-appearance mention. If anyone caught it, the Protostar.
Oh.
That's cute. What about some kinds of or some sorts of Dark Lord?
We got one. Jordy, while asking Data to help him scan every chip in that cargo bay panel in the corner, said, "There's got to be some kind of trail we can follow."
Nice. Perfect. All right. In the previous episode, the host, that guy also had his own trail. All right. Get us started off on the right track, Melissa Longo, if you would, please. What do you think of this episode? Thanks, TJ.
Came to my head when you said that was manscaping.
Okay.
Okay. But anyway, go watch the last episode, and you'll understand why this is relevant. This was a good Geordi Must Suffer episode combined with a good Klingon episode. I enjoy Klingon episodes because they always give us more to the Klingon world and Klingon culture and Klingon tradition and Klingon everything. And it's so fun because Klingons are becoming more and more rich. And we're becoming, more accustomed to their customs. And the Geordi Must Suffer thing, it made me wonder because is this contagious? Because O'Brien takes it to Deep Space Nine with him. So did Geordi pass it along to O'Brien? And then I had another question, and this may be my imagination, but during this moment, it seemed like Geordi poured his drink on O'Brien on purpose. Now, am I wrong? Just kidding. Of course he did, but that was funny. It was interesting. I liked the use of O'Brien in this. I liked the use of the Klingons in this. I liked the use of the Romulans in this. And I like that the word espionage kept popping into my head watching this episode, even though it wasn't strictly espionage. It was other stuff, but yeah, it was fun.
Yep. Tons of fun. Thanks very much. Melissa Longo, cool show. Oh, I get it. Ryza and Chill because they went to Ryza, or Geordi
so
presumably
sad
would have.
that Geordi didn't actually get to go to Ryza. See, he suffers again.
Geordi didn't actually anything in this one.
No.
Again. So Jason M. Oken is up next. Jason, what did you think of this episode? And what did you think of the directing?
Well, obviously, you had David Livingston. He told you a lot more than I ever could about this. I think it was wonderfully directed. And part of the fact that we enjoyed it so much is because of the way it looked. Yeah. The way he was able to, obviously it was his first directorial job on Star Trek, but he certainly, even at the beginning in the shuttlecraft, he found 3 different angles to shoot that from. And that tiny little box, which is, something to see, or, there's a lot more, and I'll talk about a lot more of it later, wide angles and all that wonderful stuff. But the episode certainly moves, swiftly along. LeVar's acting is tremendous. Anytime he gets something to do, even if he suffers, maybe that's why it's so fun to watch. But it's no secret it's sort of Star Trek's version of the Manchurian Candidate, and that's why we kind of find the story familiar. It's something we can relate to. It moves along swiftly. There are things in it that I will save for later that may not stand up to that much scrutiny. But again, that's all in good fun. We get Larry Dobkin here, who had a lot more fun probably doing this and directing the original series, where he had some issues doing Charlie X. But again, that's something more later.
Ooh, juicy. You just mentioned a few things that David Livingston told us about. Good knowledge there, Jason. All right. Chris Garris is here. He's probably going to say some things that I've said because, I'm easy to predict. What do you think of this one?
I thought it was a good episode. When it first starts off, you actually think Geordi's maybe going to get to have a good time. But, and also you think, he's also going to maybe have some creeper moments, but unfortunately, he did not even get to Ryza because he is attacked by those Romulans. But it basically, the episode really kind of, for me, it has the stories of dealing with military intelligence and trying to brainwash somebody so that you can get them to do what you want, and trying to change the outcome of either an active war or an impending battle. Which led me to think about some stuff that's going on in the world today. where you've got outside parties trying to influence the outcome of other currently, wars or battles that are going on on our planet right now. And that kind of made me think about when Geordi beamed down those weapons, even though he did it, covertly. It kind of made me think about what we're doing as a country every now and then when we're giving weapons to other entities to try and, influence the outcome of something. So I've got other things for later. But on some more positive notes, John Fleck was in there. He was the Romulan who was doing all the brainwashing. And his voice is so recognizable. And 10 years from now, he still sounds the same as he did when he was Silik on Enterprise. I was like, yep, that's Silik. Of course, I always knew him as Silik. And also, this is our very first time we meet our mysterious Romulan friend, who just so happens to sound like Pasha Yar. So we have, I think, one more episode before we get to, one or two more episodes before we get to see that reveal. But we got a few more things for things left unsaid. But overall, it was a good episode.
Great stuff, Mr. Chris Garris. All right, Commodore Schwent. That's a Romulan reference if I ever heard one. What'd you think of this one?
This one is definitely an excellent one. I enjoy it a lot. It features one of my husband's favorite Geordi lines about him rattling off those commands to the computer and then slipping in there, "Oh yeah, kill the music." Yeah, hubby loves that one. It does have a decent amount of action to it, but I like how it feels slower paced to me, but still you're still following things along really well, and it's very well done. I'm sure David Livingston loves the Manchurian Candidate. Apparently really wanted to get a cameo from somebody from that movie, but they were never able to pull it off, so then he had to settle for the visual homages in the hallway and Miles getting killed. Side note, props to Colmini on his death in that scene with his legs still staying on the chair that Geordi's gotta shove off to sit the chair back up, and then the close up on his face of his death face. Very, very well done, keeping his face perfectly still. I watched it very closely. I saw no twitches whatsoever. So good job, Colin. And brief guest stars. We have a Lieutenant J sighting. She was in the transporter room. And Jason mentioned the ambassador directed the TOS episode Charlie X. I looked at his IMDb page. He was a very busy man over his career, over 200 acting credits and over 80 directing credits, in addition to all that acting. So, he clearly liked to keep busy. And with John Fleck, in addition to him being Silik later on, he was another Romulan on Deep Space Nine in the episode that I call in my head the Silent Legos episode, where we are introduced to Section 31, that really long Latin name title. I just like calling it Silent Legos because it's fun and I'm weird. And also I found online that this is the first ep that Major Barrett actually gets credit for being the voice of the computer. And I enjoy her as a computer in this episode, especially when Geordi's doing the trivia, because the computer gets a tiny bit sassy with that first question. Pauses just long enough, and Geordi's like, "Oh, I know that." Pauses just long enough before it slips in. "Oh yeah, I wanted an alphabetical order." Way to go with the sass there, computer. And it's also the third episode in a row that starts with an officer's personal log. She had Deanna in two episodes ago, and Dr. Crusher in the last episode, and now Geordi. I love that. And before I get to the limerick, they easily could have ended, I feel like, with the episode with the Klingons beaming down and then the shot of the ship. They could have easily ended it with that, but I love that they ended it with Geordi and Deanna and his little therapy session, her really flexing her counselor muscles and starting to help Geordi work through all of the mental Romulan nonsense. LeVar just absolutely kills it. That last shot of him trying desperately to remember what actually happened and not what he remembers happening. Definitely well done on that. And obviously I like the Romulans, background. I got my Star Trek The Cruise Romulan Star Empire shirt on. So naturally it came to me immediately thinking about the limerick for the episode. It had to be a Romulan focused limerick, so I will finish with that. Messing with his mind has worked very well. It's left no trace as far as we can tell. We've conducted some tests. The programming does the rest. All commands given will not be repelled.
Excellent work. Thank you very much, Commodore Schwent of the Romulan Star Empire. All right, TJ Jackson Bay is out in Missouri. What's up, TJ? What'd you think of this one?
Well, Chris Garris stole my lead in because I immediately, when I saw John Fleck's name pop up on the screen, connected him to Silic. But I'm thinking, well, who was he in this episode? Because I hadn't watched it in a while. And as my mind, played ahead a few minutes, I was like, oh yeah, he's that guy. I recognize the voice. So I got excited, and I was glad to be able to listen to him and know who he was in this episode. I thought this episode was very well played out. There was several cues that really caught my attention that just kind of builds up that drama, builds up that suspense, especially like when LaForge is you see him aiming this phaser and the music kicks in and it's dramatic and it's got you thinking something's about to happen, but he's just testing the phaser rifle out. And then let's see, there was another one. Yeah, when he goes to Dr. Crush, you're like, yeah, surely Dr. Crush is going to find out that something's going on with his visor or all of that, business. Nope, doesn't happen. So, I liked all of those, kind of anticipation cues that they gave us to see, is the crew going to find out that something's not right here? How are they going to find out? Is he actually going to kill the guy? Like, how far is this going to go before we get some resolution or is he going to catch himself? Like his investigation's going too fast and all of that stuff. So, really enjoyed the kind of suspense that this episode built. It even years later still, even though I know what happens, keeps me at the edge of my seat because it's just, again, well paced and those cues they hit every time. Every time I see him aiming that phaser, I'm like, just for a moment. So it's always fun to watch. And of course it has Romulans in it. So
there it is.
So yeah, I got a lot to say about this one. I got more for things left unsaid, but great episode. Always fun.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri. All right, somebody that's never loved a Romulan, Dr. Susan V. Gruner. What'd you think of this one?
Well, I really like this episode a lot. I guess I should start at the beginning. I loved at the very beginning, there's a warning for foul language. Did you notice that?
No.
Boring Klingon.
No, that must be an Amazon special.
I had to go back and look at it again to make sure I wasn't seeing things. I love this slow, mythological, logical way that they forensically analyzed the E-band and covert communication. I absolutely love that about this whole episode. And what TJ said, the anticipation, the questioning, everything was great. I wrote a note down. I want that little shuttlecraft. Is it me or have we seen that little shuttlecraft so adorably cute lying in the shuttle bay before? I want it.
Yeah.
Where can I get that? Who has it?
The Mercedes dealership, they're called smart cars.
I love that. And I like that we have a little taste of a surprise guest coming up in another episode or so. And that's all I'll say about that. But yeah, great episode. The whole thing was great. I don't think it's a 10, but I would give it a 9.8.
Oh.
Wow, ruthless.
Wow.
Sue. My goodness.
Savage.
Sue's a monster.
To 12 at least.
All right. Allison Leach Hyde is also here. Allison, what is up with New Mexico? How do you guys in New Mexico feel about this episode?
I've never polled the entire state, so no idea. But how I feel about it, I enjoy it. I feel a little spoiled. 2 episodes in a row with 2 of my favorite characters as the center, so that's always exciting. And both great episodes for Troy too, which is so much fun because I love the scene between Geordi and Troy when he gets back from Riza. And she's just like, tell me about, how did it go? Like, what'd you do? What'd you do? What'd you do? And then he finally at the end goes, well, you wouldn't want to hear about who the girl I hooked up with, and her face is just beautiful. Like, oh, of course I want to know. He's there for the tea. So I love that. And I want to know what the Romulans have against O'Brien. Like, why did they pick O'Brien as the one to, like, here? We're going to train you how to kill people, and we're going to use O'Brien. Why? I mean, I know why, because he's a side character we all enjoy, but I thought it was funny that the Romulans are like, no, we don't like O'Brien, and we're going to change your mind about him. And then, of course, after he kills him in the brainwashing scene, I loved the throwing him off the chair, taking his seat, his drink, and then taking over his point in the conversation. Like, this is just normal. I'm like, the Romulans have a very different society than we do. And I thought that was pretty great. And let's see, seeing the ambassador's costume for like the 3rd time, I think, since it's in the movies too. I'm like, ooh, it's the ambassador from the movies. At least the same outfit. And I love that the Klingons will shoot themselves in the foot to completely diswarf as much as they can, even people. Love that they kept that in too. So I thought this was truly a Star Trek episode. Like, we had our Romulans, we had our Klingons, we had, political intrigue, and everyone playing on brand. And so it's a ton of fun. Really like it. And the brainwashing chair behind Ryan is my favorite prop. And the scene, like how they shot it, I thought was great.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much, Allison Leach Hyde, who does not poll the entire state of New Mexico. She's like, that's ridiculous, Ryan. Who would ever do that? Greg Kenzo out in Hawaii. Greg, how do the people in Hawaii feel about this episode?
I did take a poll and everybody loves it. So I'm going to take a left turn, actually, which is going to be weird for some people. I did not like this episode for one single reason. Geordi and Data are my favorite characters. I thought it was way too easy to brainwash Geordi. You know what I mean? And it was unsettling. So maybe that makes it a good episode, So maybe it was just that I didn't like how easy it was to brainwash Geordi. And like how it could be done so quickly and without changing his personality at all. It was so unsettling, but maybe that makes it a great episode. So, so it's not a bad episode. Let me switch to my notes real quick. I'm going to say that, Geordi starts with the opening log. I like that he gets that. He gets so much in this episode. LeVar Burton's torture acting is amazing. Some actors it can be a little hacky, but he just ramps it up perfectly. And the final scream at the end with the the shot behind Ryan. Yeah, so maybe I'll take back what I said. I don't like that Geordi is so easily susceptible. It's not like I don't like the episode, but I definitely didn't like that. It kind of felt like this was written for Data. You know what I mean? Like Data could have got detained and like reprogrammed as a Manchurian candidate. Maybe, I don't know. But I could tell by the not only its plot, but its area. It's the 25th episode of this season, so I knew it was a tension building episode. You know what I mean? And I love my bottle episodes. I love those. I do like these Romulan ones, but I'm newer to Star Trek, so I'm less versed in all the background. But I'm still catching up, and it's taking some time. But yeah, overall it was like it was great. It's great. There are some nitpicks I have with it but to comment on David Livingston's directorial debut, I loved the wide shots of the cargo bay, and I think that's why the shuttlecraft looks so small, because you get these huge shots that we've never seen before, and I loved all of them. And those shot behind me,
in my office, definitely.
Oh, really? I love this shot behind me. This whole scene behind me was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to take back what I said in the beginning. It's not a bad episode. It's just that when you do that to my boy Geordi, it hurts me.
Yeah. Don't mess with his guy.
Yeah.
Very meta review from Greg Kenzo, kind of talking himself through it. Great stuff. Thank you very much, Greg, out in Hawaii. All right, the Dark Lord is here. What do you think, Chris McGee? Be kind.
I will be kind to offset Greg's review. This is a pretty fantastic episode that furthers the plot line of Romulans interfering with the Klingon Federation alliance. As many of you know, one of the best tactics in any conflict is to get your enemies to fight themselves, and it certainly seems like something the Romulans would do. Brief sidebar. The first time I ever saw anything with the title of The Mind's Eye was the 1990 straight-to-video compilation of early CGI, back when computer-generated imagery was still a novel concept. And it was one of my favorite videos to watch and rewatch over and again. I appreciate the cinematography choices, as Jason mentioned, like shooting off the reflective computer screen and the wide, almost fisheye lenses later on. Also, I wasn't aware of this the first time or two that I saw this episode, but it became apparent on repeated viewings that the E-band transmissions took place almost every time the scene shifted to Geordi's perspective through the visor with the green Romulan graphics. The only exception, I think, is the scene in 10 Forward right before Geordi spills his drink on O'Brien. I feel like that might have been an oversight in production or a last-minute change or something. I don't know. Small observation, the panel that Geordi was using in the corner of Cargo Bay is certainly a popular one, as it comes up again in future episodes, so keep a lookout for that. As Carrie mentioned, we get a brief Jay and Kellogg sightings in this episode. Jay in the transporter room near the end, and Kellogg in Cargo Bay 4 during the investigation. And as for my memorable quote to the episode, it's something I find myself saying more and more often these days as I get older. Geordi's final line of the episode: "I'm just not sure about anything."
Can I just bring up, Chris McGee, that picture you just showed us? Is that Patricia Tallman?
No, I think that's Kellogg.
I don't believe so.
I think that's the lady that plays Kellogg. What do you
she
think,
looks
Chris?
like Patricia Tallman.
From a distance, I guess she that has a bearing resemblance to her. But no, that's definitely a different actress. I can't remember her name, but it's not Patricia Tallman.
Oh, okay.
But I've seen her before too and thought the same. Let me see. Let's see if we can find Kellogg real quick. While Sirach Lofton gives us Jake's final take. Final thoughts on this episode, Sirach?
Yeah, I got a few thoughts. One, I like that Latin jazz and the Spanish guitar was brought up. I think that's a Rene Echevarria special nugget that he placed in there. That's my guess, but yeah, it's very specific, and it's a good reference to Latin culture and the musical contributions. I loved the Klingon High Council emissary Ambassador Kell's outfit. I thought it was just as good as you can get for a Klingon ambassador outfit. It was detailed, it was layered, it was textured. Love the colors. Really looked like some Game of Thrones type shit. So I loved it. As far as that mask that they wore, that Geordi wore during the torture, really brought back certain kind of Silence of the Lambs vibes for me. You know, that kind of perforated mask on your face. So I just thought it was interesting because Silence of the Lambs came out in 1991 as well. So here they both came out around the same time. I also thought that the Federation weapons being used was a good storyline, you know, because we see cases in which guns have been run before in different nefarious operations. So I thought that's a good call. It just made the level of suspicion raise about what's really going on. I loved the way that Patrick Stewart performed in this episode, specifically when he was confronted by the Klingon and he took that measured moment to confront them and match his energy with, you know, more aggression. And I thought it was well delivered. It just showed the courage, bravery, and decision making by Captain Picard. He doesn't usually get into that mode, but every once in a while, if he has to bring it out, he'll bring it out. And I thought it was well deserved at this moment. I thought I liked it. He also had a great line at the end of this episode, which I thought resonated well, when he says, "I will certainly grant you asylum once you've been absolved of the crimes." It was so beautiful. It was the greatest "I got you" moment ever. And I just thought, perfect Picard line. And especially because Picard was offering to have him inspected, you know, by his own personnel. So technically he would have been in Starfleet custody, arrested during that inspection, right? But since you declined that offer, we'll play this game of chess. And I thought that's indicative of how Picard kind of politically operates. So that was very good. I looked up some of that E-band stuff, and, you know, because I just wonder if they just pulled this stuff out of thin air, but it's actually really used in communications. It's used in satellite communications. The E-band is available for commercial, very high throughput satellite communication systems. It's also used in E-band power amplifiers in 5G. So all of our 5G phones have E-band application amplifiers that are used. So it's a real thing. These smart guys actually brought us
the E Street Band.
Yeah. Oh well, that too. But you know, for these Star Trek guys to bring in an intellectual concept that is now applied in 5G, which is a relatively new thing, right? So, you know, that's the kind of foresight the writers have and the kind of research that they do when they bring in concepts. So kudos to them. And I guess the last thing I'll say is I always try to look for ways in which I think the story could be enhanced just a little bit. And to Greg's point about Geordi's, you know, brainwashing and how easily it was done, I think that Geordi could have added an element of Geordi investigating his own experience. Because if he really did hook up with this girl, wouldn't he want to follow up on her and maybe like contact her And maybe there could have been some kind of storyline there where he's questioning that. He's like, yeah, I tried to find her. She's not on the Risa catalog. I don't understand, and he could have been questioning his own sanity. Like, I've met this girl, and if he really believes that, I believe that Geordie's not the person that's just going to fling with somebody and walk away and never talk to them again and ignore it. I think he's the type of guy that would be like totally following up and excited about it. So that should have rang suspicion to him. Like, if I have a memory about something, that amazing, I'm going to try to follow up on it. And it just didn't seem to be enough follow up. So I think there could have been a way to improve the story where he's actually questioning his own memory, adding to the investigations, all the other investigations that were happening. But that would have been something Geordie would have done, I believe, because he just brushed it off too quickly. So there's my final take.
All right, real quick. I do think it is Ensign Kellogg. A quick check here. She does look very much like Patricia Tallman. We've made this mistake before, but I mean, here she is when you Google her. I mean, that's definitely, I mean, she looks so much like her, but we've seen her a bunch of times. I think this was the first time we saw her right here. I don't remember what episode it was, but she was kind of going in there. And she had a few lines at one point as well in Engineering with Geordie, and this one did a lot of memes about butt dials and things like that. But anyway, she's around.
Yeah, the one in the blue specifically, especially looks like Patricia Tallman.
Mm-hmm.
They do look very
you're right.
similar.
You were right. Her name is Cameron, apparently. No last name, just Cameron. Goes by Cameron.
Okay.
All right, that's it for us, everybody. Thank you to Chris McGee, Greg Kenzo, Allison Leachhide, Susan V. Gruner, TJ Jackson Bay, Commodore Schwent, Chris Garris, Jason M. Oak, and Melissa Longo. And of course, for myself, Sirach, Melissa, and Aaron Eisenberg, thank you all so much for hanging out with us. We will see you next time. And until then, always remember...